Hey everybody, it's Jessica Dupuis, and we're doing another IG Live today to talk about the wines of Southwest USA. So if you've ever had any curiosity about Texas wine, Arizona wine, New Mexico wine, or Colorado wine, this would be a book for you. Today I'm really excited to introduce to you a man who I met who's involved with Arizona wine. His name is Pavle Milic. Hello, everybody. I'm seeing all sorts of people. Jake and Clive, nice to see you. And I see that Pavle has joined. So in just a second, he's going to request to be invited into the chat and we'll start talking. But Pavle is a really interesting character because he's got a great background in wine. And here he comes. He can kind of help tell his story, but not only is he a sommelier, but beverage director for a restaurant, but he started making wine himself. So this is super fun to kind of give you the full picture of there he is. I see him. Hello. How's it going?
Hi. Going well. How are you?
I am good.
I'm here with my partner in crime.
Hey, Ita, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. You guys are not in Arizona right now. Tell me where y'all are.
We are in Venice Beach. Actually, we had to come out to the West Coast because the closest Chilean consulate is in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And we do some shenanigans, some business with a passport for Ita Son Renato. So it gave us an excuse to get away from 2020, if you will, a little suspension of reality in front of the beach, and wonderful people watching, for sure.
Yeah, Venice Beach is great for that, for sure. And so you've got cute little Ronaldo in the background. Yes, yeah. I just saw him. Yeah. Hey! And you mentioned the Chilean consulate, so let's just put this all in perspective. Ita is from, or introduce Ita for us so that we get the full picture.
My better half, Carla Milic, but I call her Ita.
Yes.
And the both of us obviously get our hands dirty on the vineyard and the winery. So it's Los Milic Winery. In terms of the labor, it's this lady and I.
I love it. So this is super fun because you guys are now, like right off the bat, you're talking winery. But is that something that you would have thought you'd be talking about 10 years ago or 5 years ago even?
No, for me, for him, it's different story.
Well, no, I would never thought I would be in this position right now, but I will say this. I was lucky enough to spend some time in Napa Valley, in wine country, professionally speaking. I worked there for Bettina at Angel Restaurant. So I was there for a little bit over 4 years. And having been in the business my whole life, and obviously throughout the years that, of waiting tables and seeing wine labels from California and knowing about the luminaries in terms of winemakers, to go there as an official out of the closet winemaker groupie, it was great to be in wine country, especially at Bettina's Place, which was sort of the meeting place, the restaurant that a lot of the local winemakers went to. So during my time there, I distinctively remember driving up Silverado Trail, and I was going to go help Tadeo Borchardt at Nyers. He's still the official winemaker there. Bruce Nyers is a winery. Yeah. And the smell of harvest was pervasive. And I remember having a very personal sort of whisper that, said something along the lines like, wouldn't it be wonderful if maybe one day I can be involved in this world? But it just seems so out of reach. In terms of, there's different routes, obviously, to get into the wine world, but to be involved in a project in which it involves building a winery, establishing vineyards, had you told me 16 years ago that would be the case, I would have said no. But be careful for what you wish for, because that seed was planted 16 years ago, and it has been in gestation ever since then. And how we got here,
well, let's break that down actually, because okay. I want to put like a little pin in Napa, because we're going to come back to it. But you've worked on the restaurant side for many years as mainly a GM, but also wine buyer. You're in charge of wine programs, and so we don't have to go through the whole resume, but most importantly, in terms of Arizona wine, is the fact that you have been part of F&B Restaurant, which is led by Charlene Badman, and who's a James Beard Award winner, and you yourself are a James Beard Award nominee for your wine program.
Yes, ma'am.
But tell me about that, because that is a restaurant in Scottsdale that's focused on seasonality, but more importantly, locality, something that's, everything is sourced locally. And then tell me about how the wine program evolved based on that kind of philosophy.
After returning from wine country, the old saying, how do you make God laugh? You tell him all about your future plans. I didn't think I was going to come back to the Valley, to tell you the truth. I thought I was going to stay in Napa, but someone made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, like Godfather style, to build 2 restaurants, help design, and establish the front of the house team. Anyways, open up restaurants in Old Town Scottsdale.
Yeah.
When I was sort of finished with that professional tenure with Kaspersky, I worked very briefly for Intercontinental Hotels Group, and I realized very quickly that I did not want to be in a position in corporate America for what I do as a GM. So I knew that I wanted to do my own thing, and Charlene Badman, my business partner, and really the main reason why people go to the restaurant, because I married up big time, and she's extremely talented and a hell of a cook. She had just returned from New York City. Yes. So to work, we would sort of, meet, a little local place, have a couple of beers, and sort of, commiserate and have water cooler talk about, our nights. And I was a little, professionally speaking, I was a little dismayed and frustrated at my position, though they liked me and I was, never let go or anything like that. I was just not happy in that setting. And I told Charlene, I said, listen, I'm going to go look for money, and we're going to go look for a spot, and we're going to open up a place. And one of the best decisions that I made, besides having this lady with me, was to have selected Charlene to have Charlene Badman be my partner.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll go look for money. And obviously she also went with me to all these meetings, but we decided to do this in 2009. And I don't know if you can all remember what was going on in 2009. Everybody was becoming, let's just say, severely parsimonious, right? But finally somebody said, yes, we opened up a restaurant F&B. We had a really, really little wine list. It was like 5 whites, 5 reds, and 1 rosé while we were opening up the doors, because our operating capital after we opened up the restaurant was like maybe $1,200 just to pay the person we could pay. A month after opening up, I asked Charlene, I said, Char, what would you think? And to contextualize this, I had tasted Arizona wine before and I was quite impressed. When you're a wine buyer, you not only taste wines for your own palate, but you taste wines for a varied spectrum of people, so that you have all kinds of styles of wine, and you also taste it for balance and for lack of flaws or what have you. And I thought that Arizona had a pretty distinctive story to tell, because the wines were delicious. And though in terms of typicity, some wines did not taste like, for example, some wines that I've had before, to me, Arizona wines were more redolent of the old world versus California.
Yeah.
So I asked Charlene, do you think I can author a list that would just showcase Arizona wines? And, she supported me 100%. She said, well, Pavle, I trust you, do whatever you want. But the idea really was to sort of bridge the gap between food and wine. The way that Charlene sources at F&B is obviously putting a spotlight on what's happening in Arizona locally, fomenting relationships with farmers, artisans, growers. So the amalgamation of food and wine was really, at the end of the day, a way to sort of create this lens through which people can experience Arizona on real time in terms of seasonality, meaning you're never going to see a peach cobbler in December, but not only are you going to taste what's being extricated from the ground that day, you're going to also get a chance to taste the fruits of the labor of many winemakers in the state. So it's, you know, it's kind of like a Portlandia episode, you know, like it's uber local. Not necessarily in a way to like chase a trend or what have you. It was just, you know, if we know anything about locality and seasonality, it's been done like that for hundreds of years in Europe. So what better way to showcase the place that we live in? What better way to give a tip of the hat to local artisans, to what's going on in our state, and what better way to create pride among us? And by that I mean, you know, in our business, sometimes we do go to major markets like the one we're in, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, in terms of research and development to get inspired. And I remember getting on a soapbox like 10 years ago saying, listen, not until we start really believing in ourselves, supporting ourselves, and finding little roughs in the gem in our state, like no one's going to pay attention. Long story short, after we decided to do that, I think it was a month and a half later after we opened, my ugly mug was in the front cover of the business section of the New York Times on the Sunday edition. It was an article about the likelihood of a locavore movement. And they did talk about what this little gin joint in the desert was doing with, you know, marrying food and wine.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's how it all started. And it's been great because F&B has been sort of this like Grand Central Station of all wonderful people that do stuff in the state that, you know, makes us feel proud of the place we live in.
Yeah. I think it's really cool because you guys were really kind of the first to stake your claim and say, we're going to take a risk here and we're going to put some, you know, not only just some Arizona wine, but I think it was like a full menu, right? And then you still had some, like a reserve list, if you will, if people wanted something not from Arizona. But the reception since then has been, how would that go with the guest? You might say, because I remember you told me you had kind of a trick, not a trick in a bad way, but like to test them out on Arizona wine. How did you get them to start accepting it?
So well, I mean, so before we actually printed the list,
Right.
I knew that what I was tasting was delicious, right?
Yeah.
But I also knew, like any nascent wine growing region, you know, there's some growing pains and there's some wines out there that are not properly made, or, you know, wines that people didn't like in the past. So having said all of that, I knew that I liked it, but I was still a little insecure about my own instincts. So when I reached out to local winemakers and distributors, I had at my disposal a lot of samples that were left over. So while we were open, just to sort of validate hopefully to validate what I was tasting, guests would come into the restaurant and I would pour them a glass of whatever Arizona. And I would say, we're going to play this game. You're going to smell this wine. You're going to cogitate over its olfactory attributes. And when I come back, if you can guess where it's from or the grape varietal, I'll buy you dessert or I'll buy you whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I did this for about a week. So I guess to answer your question, no one guessed it was from Arizona, but I also asked a very important question before I disclosed provenance. And it was something along the lines of, did you enjoy the wine and will you order it? Yeah. And I didn't give away any hints. And everyone said, oh my God, yeah, this is delicious. I would totally order it again. So after a week, I was pretty convinced that, oh yeah, we got this in the can. Well, we print the list, and suddenly people that I've been waiting on for years and years, Jessica, are saying, what are you thinking? Why are you in these wines? You like, this is your first business? You just got to go to the big time. You got to go to big leagues. You got to do regular wine. So at the beginning, there was friction. There was a little pushback from some people, but conversely speaking, Arizona wine also came with an inbuilt clientele. And thankfully, still to this day, there's a local journalist from the Arizona Republic who is a fan of what we do. And as soon as we opened up, you know, besides the New York Times spotlight, we got a lot of attention locally. And for authoring a list that was mainly all Arizona, for the exception of a list that we would not bring out to the table. We had it there, just in case someone did knee jerk. And then I told Charlene, so what do we call this other list? And she says, oh, just call it the Plan B. We had a list just in case. But uh, when we, I think education and fun exercise at the beginning were extremely instrumental.
Yeah.
So we did a sort of redo of the Paris tasting of 1976, but our own version of it. Yeah. So we reached out to all the local wineries for them to send samples. And we had a battery of local wine geeks, well-drunk people in the business, so they can select the best 5 whites and red wines from Arizona. And then I curated benchmark classics from all over the world. I remember in that lineup we have Pinot Grigio from Santa Margarita, which, love it or you hate it, is considered a recognizable wine that a lot of people drink. Yep. We have First Growth Bordeaux, the Chateau Limbache. Yep. And we had a Chianti Classico, and we had a Tempranillo. And then the second tasting was with Gary V. Gary Vaynerchuk was one of the judges. We had Laura Williamson, who was the master sommelier, still is to this day. Yeah. We had the Mark Tarbell, who owns a restaurant and also happens to be the wine columnist for the Arizona Republic. Anyway, so Chris Bianco was there, Anne Rosenzweig, a mentor and former boss of mine from New York City, was also a judge. Long story short, I believe, some journal, and at the time had not been sold. It was still an independent publication. Yes. In charge of tabulating the results. So long story short, at the end of the day, when all the results came in, the first place for a white wine went to Ken Callaghan, which was the Lisa's Blend. And the first place went to Maynard for the Caduceus Judith's Block Cabernet Sauvignon, which was momentous and special because that's, Maynard spread his mom's ashes on that vineyard, and it's a beautiful terrace vineyard. So it was pretty cool that wine won the event. Anyways, in addition to that, we also did a War of the Roses, where we were paired Arizona Rosé against, rosés from all over the world. So what I'm trying to get at is that we did a lot of the drop the veil kind of exercises, because when we drink with baggage, meaning, when you've been drinking for a while, we have our favorites. When you drink with baggage, sometimes and when you know what you're tasting, you come with your own echo chamber of biases and opinions. Yep. But when you perform blind tastings, and it's not that I love blind tastings to show off, if you know something, but I think it levels the playing field. I'm a huge believer in tasting wines contextually, and by that I mean having the wine with the winemaker, you're knowing how they made it, and hopefully you're having it with food. And that to me is the best kind of tasting. But blind tastings were extremely instrumental in letting people know that, sometimes we do have biases. And now we're 11 years in, and we still have people locally that, I think anymore people are aware that there's a wine, Arizona wine industry. But, there's people that still have not come down to Southern Arizona or to Cottonwood. But after 10 years, I can say that, it's no longer a novelty. And it's no longer a wine that is sort of like the moral obligation to put something local on the list. So for us, it has been nothing but rewarding, not only to showcase what happens in the state, but also to have been nominated out of 20 restaurants in the country from the James Beard Foundation 2 times in 2017 and 2020 for what we do with the wine program, which puts a huge spotlight in what we do here in Arizona, means a lot. Yeah. Because it really, to be able to sort of go beyond your 4 walls and run a restaurant that invites not only the whole community, but it is part of a larger conversation, it's been great. So, and, we continue, we don't do the blind tastings anymore. And in fact, when you're in sales and when you, when you're waiting tables and when you sell wine, you never really do stop selling, but we no longer have to, quote unquote, cajole people into having. Now it's an educational conversation pertaining to provenance and pertaining to what varietals do well here. So the conversation has been elevated. Yeah.
I find, in my coverage of wines across the country, like I find that people are more and more aware that a lot of the states are creating wine. And so they're kind of curious, and sometimes at least in the case of Texas, I've found that sometimes the harder person to get on board is actually the person that's from the state. Whereas people from outside the state, when they come to visit, they're actually really curious, like, oh, you have something here that I need to try. So, but all of that's starting to kind of mesh a little bit better. I'm curious from your perspective, you made a point a second ago about how the Arizona wines that you had tasted early on and kind of throughout the past decade, they kind of have or lean more towards your old world styles. And in researching this book, I kind of found the same, but I also found that in a similar way to like New Zealand wines, where we talk about like a purity of fruit, I feel like Arizona, especially for the single varieties where you can really think about it rather than the blends, you guys really hit on some beautiful, very pristine, clean fruit characteristics, but then also those tertiary notes that you get from old world wines balance out really well. And I'm just curious, you know, kind of what your thoughts are on that. Is it the fruit? Is it the expression of the terroir of these different regions, whether it's Sonoita or Wilcox or Verde Valley, or kind of what are your thoughts on that?
I think, Jessica, it's a little bit from column A and column B.
Yeah.
Obviously, in terms of terroir, I found in my experience, and that's the disclaimer, it's just my opinion, in my experience, that, you know, the fruit that we get from Wilcox tends to be a little more generous and lively and maybe more approachable, more quaffable, more fruit driven, whereas the fruit that I've tasted from Sonoita tends to be a bit a more rustic, savory, herbaceous per se. And when I mentioned the statement pertaining to old world versus new world, in fact, you know, we have some Grenache right now in barrel that is like a laser focused, beautiful, fruity wine.
Yeah.
I guess more fruit forward than it is earthier. So there are exceptions, I think, with some like just specific single grape varietals. But for the most part, when you're having a broader conversation about wines from here, and not to be reductive, I think they do tend towards more older world. Some of them a little bit earthier, but you also have to understand that, you know, and it also depends on the drinker. You know, we have a lot of new drinkers that, you know, with the availability of local wine, that sort of begins to be their benchmark for wine.
Right.
Whereas, you know, wine maybe when, you know, we didn't have the advent of social media or the way that we access information, wine as of 20, even 40 years ago was sort of a luxury item. And I think anymore is just an extra seasoning that we have with our food, and it's become more plebeian in a way that people enjoy it daily. So when we talk about wine, and most people do tend to compare, let's say, California, where we're talking about, you know, a Merlot that's really velvety and brambly, or whether it's a Pinot Noir, which who doesn't know Pinot? When I think guests started tasting Arizona wine at the beginning, we're talking about grape varietals like Graciano, Tanat, Cabernet Franc, which even when they're blended, you create this amalgamation of flavors that, you know, normally you don't see in California.
Yeah.
And because specifically in Sonoita, it does tend to be a little more rustic. You know, it does remind me more of stuff from Spain, Italy, even the south of France.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good like gateway or like middle ground of the both new and old world kind of wines.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to describe it. And, you know, you've mentioned a number of different grapes, and I think that's what's super exciting about what y'all are doing is y'all are experimenting. I mean, it seems as though you've definitely focused more on some warm climate varieties, right? So Spain, warmer parts of Italy, and southern France. However, you did throw out Cab Franc, and, you know, Callaghan Vineyards does amazing things with Cab Franc, and that may be a function of Sonoita being such a unique growing region. But I think it's neat that while this is a general focus that a lot of the growers are going towards, you still have a lot of room to experiment and play with different varieties. Which is kind of fun. It's like the wild frontier, if you will.
Well, I think though Arizona wine has been around since the late 80s when the AVA was established in Sonoita, I think that no one is really following a national trend. I think what we're all trying to do, and I should mention Kent and Todd in terms of what they're doing to not only try to break through this glass of what we can do here, they continue to explore with great varietals. In fact, Todd got some Branach from UC Davis, which is a great varietal from Montenegro, which is from where my dad was from. And I think Branach is supposed to meet like the Black Powerful or the Black Stallion. I don't know what, but he got some budwood from UC Davis, and he started propagating it on his vineyard. And we're gonna put that down on the ground in the Sonoita vineyard this next spring while we're grafting. Ken Callaghan continues to push the envelope. He got some, Charelo, from Spain. Todd continues to experiment. He's got, I think, he's put in Lagrange. He loves Alianico. So I think that there's always going to have to be room for exploration. And I think winemakers are always looking to do things that are fun and that are new, in addition to continuing to get to know the already established vines that you've had for a while that have been, Volvos, like good workhorses, good workhorses.
Yeah, you need both. Well, I noticed, so Sandbreckener joined the conversation, and I have really, really loved like their Vermentino, and then a lot of their Rhone wines that they've put out. And, perhaps it's worth mentioning at this point, like a lot of you guys, sorry, but like the growers and the winemakers, many of you have had experiences outside of Arizona, whether that is the Rhone Valley or Oregon, or traveling outside of out of the state, out of the country, and going to these different places to really understand what other people are doing and how that could maybe translate to the terroir that you have in Arizona. I know you guys regularly taste from outside of the state as well, and I think that kind of,
it's called research.
Yeah, it helps. Yeah, I think it helps inform the things that y'all need to be doing, but also the ways that you can go in your own way, in your own path.
You said that Sandbreckener joined. We planted, I want to say 1,200 vines of Vermentino, and I have to give a tip of the hat. I think Greg Gunnerman is the gentleman from Wilcox that planted Vermentino, and I think he was on Rob and Sarah Hammelman's advice. And the first time I had Vermentino from here, now mind you, I've had Vermentino in the past. I had some great examples from Sardinia, which were very delicious. I had more serious kind of stoic examples from Corsica. Yep. And when I tasted Rob and Sarah's Vermentino from Wilcox, I was so impressed because the wine was complex. It was powerful, but not in a cloying way. It was just a serious, delicious wine. And in terms of typicity, it reminded me a lot of those old world examples. So thanks, Rob and Sarah and Greg Gunnerman. And now, hopefully, you'll get to taste Vermentino from our vineyard. We're on first year, so 21 to 22. In 2022, we'll see how Vermentino does in Sonoita.
In Sonoita, yeah. So let's actually talk about that. So far we've talked about how you've been restaurant general manager, wine buyer, sommelier, if you will, and introducing Arizona wine to the restaurant, which you're still working with F&B, but you're now also your own winemaker. I guess I would say wine producer, because you do a lot of things in partnership with your wife, Carla, who I know stepped out for a second, but so I love this because not only are you just you bought a vineyard in Wilcox a while ago, right?
3 years ago, yes.
3 years ago. And then now in this pandemic time, y'all have really had some time to, and you've put roots in the ground in Sonoita with planting a vineyard, and then over the past 6 months have completely constructed a winery. Is this right? Tell me about what y'all been up to.
So when my business partner came into the picture, and in getting this project off of the floor,
yes,
though in terms of dollars and cents, another sort of format of being in this business is to not have your own vineyard, but to buy contracted fruit.
Yeah.
That's a little risky, just in case you lose your grower or you lose the fruit for whatever reason. So we knew that we wanted and needed a vineyard, and hopefully, down the road, cementing some relationship with growers, just in case, we had an oh crap moment from Mother Nature. But so we looked for a vineyard, and we were lucky that when Dickie Rath from Oregon came down to establish the Cimarron Vineyard, which is now owned by Todd and Kelly Bostock,
Yep.
Juan Alba established a vineyard in 2010 in Elfrida, which is located about 30 minutes south of Wilcox or about 20 minutes north of Agua Prieta. Mm-hmm. And he was looking to sell it. And, lucky for us, the stars lined up and we were able to obtain this vineyard at the beginning of 2018. Yeah. And that first yield from that harvest all went to Maynard because we didn't have a place to obviously, for production. And then in 2019, last year, all the fruit was processed at Todd and Kelly's winery. So now fast forward to, pardon me?
I was going to say for you, right? At that.
For Milic, yeah. When we were able to find the wineries, when we also began the search for property. And though Arizona boasts 3 different wine growing regions, I selected Sonoita because I started coming down about 10 years ago. And not only did I fall in love with the place, I fell in love with the people. And also, I felt that in terms of distinction, not in a hoity-toity way, Arizona wine to me from Sonoita had another layer of depth, another layer of complexity that I really enjoyed. And I love the undulating nature of these grasslands, and it's truly a unique landscape. And as soon as you get off the 10 and you enter the 83 scenic route and you crest, you go up to about 4,700 feet in elevation, and you see this landscape, you understand why you want to spend time there.
Yeah.
So that's where we were looking for land. And in looking for land, obviously, we're looking for a place that was not too cold. So location, we found a vineyard that is about 5,000 feet in elevation. It's on a bit of a hill. So for those of you that, might not know, one of the challenges about Arizona wine is this propensity for late spring frost, yes. Which, by the way, was in the 20s this morning.
Yes.
And to talk about being around cool people, Todd Bostock yesterday knew that we were in LA. He went to the vineyard and actually opened up a hose so that our pipes wouldn't freeze and drain our lines at the vineyard. So Todd, if you're listening, I think you're special. You're going to go far, and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd.
Back to the site. We were able to acquire 20 acres at the foothills of the Mustangs, which is a pretty iconic mountain range in Sonoita. And last year, we planted about 16,000 vines, half of it to vinifera, Petit Verdot, Marsanne, Montepulciano, and the rest of it to rootstock so that we would begin establishing roots. And it also gave us a little time to really consider what else we wanted to plant and what's... Mm-hmm. So this year, spring of 2021, we're going to be grafting Petit Mensan, Vermentino, Tanat, Little Carignan, and we're going to give Terol de Go a go to see how it does. It's pretty cold hardy, and I've had some great examples from Foradori that are amazing. So we would have, I think, after we planted the extension this year, Jessica, we have over 20,000 vines on the ground. We broke ground for construction in the winery at the beginning of this year. And, we process about 36 tons, just this lady and I. And we questioned our existence a couple of days, but no one went to the hospital, and it was great. So amazing. No, most importantly, everything that's in barrel is delicious. And again, no big, oh shit moments. It was wonderful.
Right. Okay. So this year was your first year to crush in your own winery. So you got it done just in time for harvest. When did harvest kind of begin for you guys?
August 3rd.
August 3rd.
And
Okay.
this year we were not making rosé or white just because we did experience a couple of frost incidents.
Okay.
And our yield, which normally would have been about 30 tons from Elfrida, was relegated at least by half. So the losses were pretty substantial this year, but we also were lucky enough to find a grower that has a pristine vineyard. It's beautiful. He's a gentleman that has run nurseries his whole life, and it shows. And he also has this little vineyard. It's in the middle of an orchard and a bunch of plants. So in terms of, for example, the birds, like
They like the apple trees.
they go to everything else but the vines. So
Oh.
it is a beautiful vineyard. So we got 21, 22 tons from Sergio this year.
Sergio Sanchez.
Okay. That's super cool.
Yeah.
And then Sonaita had some problems towards the end of harvest, or towards the beginning of harvest, I guess, where there was quite a bit of hail damage. Is that correct? Or
it was actually, yeah, it was during harvest. We got word from a gentleman that is on our unofficial F&B payroll. It's Tracy Dumpson's husband, who is a meteorologist. And he said, you guys, you have two...
He let us know.
Yeah, he let us know in the morning. He's like, you have two precipitations that are coming towards each other. And sadly, there was a hail incident that lasted 40 minutes or so. And it, decimated, obliterated more than a handful of vineyards in Sonoita. We knew what was going to happen, so we brought the John Deeres under the crush pad, the cars. We put
everything. That was like, I don't know, like, what do you say? When you have a disaster, like natural disaster?
Yeah, we were just preparing for the worst.
Yeah. Like...
So we're like literally tailgating, looking at this weather system roll in. And sure enough, we started getting some hail, but at our location, for whatever reason, and I don't know how to explain that, although we have two mountain ranges very nearby the winery. And some people have told us that because of the mountain, that the cloud pressure... Pardon me? Just two what?
People.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two people.
Two people.
They said that because of the mountain range, the cloud pressure goes up and it helps. We have no idea. But we did get a little bit of hail. It lasted like 3-4 minutes, and they were not big hunkers. And, sadly, like I said, other people and people that we know well did have a very bad next day.
Yeah.
But, welcome to farming in the worst way.
Seriously. Yeah, it's on the fringe, right? Because you deal with hail. You mentioned spring freeze, but also late or early fall frost, I would imagine, can be a problem.
This was, it was really odd, Jessica, because this year it was really hot, like up until the end, and we went from having 60 degree, 65 degree weather at night to last night it went down to 20.
Yeah.
So I think the vines are right now talking to themselves saying, what the hell was that? They're going to go get ready to fall asleep, I think.
What is it? That doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Let's hope that's happening to the vines.
Yeah, we're going to, yes.
We're going to survive. They're going to be fine.
Yeah. We similar in Texas, our far west Texas, and then the high plains definitely hit below freezing last night. So I know there are a lot of people scrambling and doing, what they do. We've got wind machines and things like that we use to try to help mitigate those things. But it's real farming. It's the real deal. So I'm just curious, now that it's kind of, and Carla, I'd love for you to chime in here too. Like, how has that been? You probably never would have thought you'd be like a wine producer. What's that feel like to kind of roll up your sleeves and get into this? Are you liking it?
It's like, I don't know, maybe I tell you this when you was visiting to us. It's like he dragged me there.
Oh.
So it's like, okay, so we're gonna do this. Of course the decision was, like, it's not he one day show up and say we need to move. No, it was mutual decisions and stuff. But I never thought all these beautifully surprises the harvest show you. And and you know what? You kind of like suffer a little bit, you know, because you are not. My work wasn't in that way. Like, you know, like the harvest work 100%. I have like an idea,
Yeah.
but may make it is very different story. It's not romantic. Like the people think that you are in the grapes, you know, like smashing. And no, it's not. It's just for the Instagram, and that's it. And but in the end, you taste the wines, and you say, "Huh, okay, we should be proud." And that's is the moment to tell you, "Okay, you need to keep going. You need to keep going." And
Keep up with it.
so,
I love that. I love that. So so far, like the wines that you have released under the Los Milics label, that's available, or when can we find your wines, and where, and all of that?
So the Los Milic label that started about 6 years ago was in the market, and by that I mean Whole Foods picked it up. Chris Bianco carried one of our wines, and we obviously sold it at F&B.
Right.
We took a 2-year hiatus because, you know, there was a shortage of grapes one year. We couldn't make it. So the wines that we produced in 2019, both the white and the rosé are in bottle, but we did not have our labels yet. So we finally got our labels. So we're going to label that soon. And we are bottling, Jessica, the reds from 2019, hopefully in about a month or a little bit less. So they should, you know, after they kind of get rid of its, you know, angular stage in bottle, we will release it obviously to F&B, and we'll let it out to the world in terms of distribution through the 3-tier system, through a distributing company, so that we have a broader reach in terms of distribution and penetrating the market. But I think, you know, at F&B alone, we'll have a great place to showcase it, obviously.
and do something special.
Yeah, that's great. I can't wait personally to try it.
Thanks.
I mean, I got to try some things in barrel and out of tank when I got to visit, but I look forward to seeing the real deal, like holding it in my hands. That'll be really cool. I'm sure even more cool for you.
Yeah, no, it was great to put some stuff in bottle. And we tested the bottling machine. Todd and Kelly were kind enough to let us have some of their old rosé labels. So we have, you know, we've done some sort of unofficial wine tastings for Los Milic with those Cabezas label, but it's just for like sampling. Yeah. But the wine is delicious, and it's great to see, obviously, the juice, the wine in bottle, because as you know, you work really hard for 9 months babying these vines, and there is so much that can go wrong, and there is so much work involved for, you know, anyone that is in this business. So to take it from vine to bottle, is not only are you being a chaperone, but you're just ensuring that, you know, not only you don't mess it up, but, you know, it's you work really hard. It's not like you can just say, I made this mistake and we get to try again. You only have one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. We do have a question here, wondering if it'll be available on the East Coast. I know you've got some roots out of the New York area. So do you think people over there will be able to get it?
So for sure, Jessica, we are going to focus obviously in our local market. In terms of distribution out of state, we do have a couple of connections in the industry. And we do have some people in the East Coast that have shown interest based on what they tasted at F&B before. Yeah. So in terms of a concrete answer, I can't give you one, but ideally, if we can get some of the wine, if we get some of the wine in the East Coast, it'll be probably next year, not right now.
Got it. Okay. Well, the last question I want to ask, just because we've kind of talked about your personal experience and how you have seen the industry evolve, and I noticed you said a couple of times just the comment that there seems to be a lot of help and a lot of support within the industry. There seems to be this camaraderie or this interest among the other producers and growers that everyone's kind of pulling for each other. And I just wonder if you could comment as we kind of wrap this up, just how is that community? How is Arizona wine as an industry, in your opinion? Because I know I was pretty impressed, but I'd love to know from your thoughts, your thoughts, just what that's been like, and how you feel that kind of pushes y'all forward.
I will just start off with the small example I mentioned earlier. In terms of being part of a community and in terms of knowing your neighbor, the fact that Todd goes out of the way to go to the vineyard to drain our lines and to open up a hose so it trickles some water so that we can come back not to frozen pipes, say a lot.
Yeah.
That's a very sort of small scale example, but we can talk about the efforts of the Arizona Vineyard Owners Alliance, which is an organization that is not only trying to oversee quality in terms of provenance to ensure that obviously all wine is from AZ. They're creating a registry of information in terms of trends and growing seasons and what's happening. In our little part of the world in Sonoita, I am extremely fortunate because people like Ken Callaghan, people like James Callahan, Todd Bostock, Anne Roncone, people that I reach out to for advice, they don't seem to be coveting secrets per se.
Yeah.
And I've always been asked questions related to like competition, and I don't believe in competition. I think that the human scale of what each person brings to their own wine cannot be replicated.
Right.
Both, again, Ken Callaghan has been making wine for 29 years. I believe he's on his 29th vintage or 30th. I don't remember. They all understand that my success is their success and vice versa, and that we do have to elevate each other. Now, mind you, my wife and I, at some capacity, are proverbially standing on their shoulders in terms of all the groundwork that they've led before us. At FMB, for the last 10 years, we added our little grain of sand in terms of putting a megaphone to what's happening and shoving these wines in front of people per se. But Todd, Kelly, Kent, Lisa, they believe that the more generous that they are in terms of assisting and helping and providing counsel, the better that it is. If, I mean, they really do not only love where they come from, but, they're all lovers of wine. And for us to continue to hopefully elevate the bar and create community through being helpful and through assisting each other it's the right thing to do. I feel very lucky to be part of that community, Jessica.
Yeah. I feel lucky to have kind of stepped my toe in it a little bit while researching this book. I feel like it was really eye-opening to see just how much work y'all have done in, quite honestly, a short period of time. When you compare it to other regions of the world, right? And then also just, that sense of community and sense of just, wanting to help each other out. I feel like you guys have just kind of made millions of steps in the right direction, again, in such a short period of time, that it's super impressive. I know, having covered Texas wine the way that I have, I've now pointed friends in the Texas wine industry to Arizona and said, we could really benefit a lot from learning from each other's best practices and things like that. And I would throw New Mexico and Colorado into that conversation. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking a little bit of time out of your little excursion over to California for a little bit of fun and a little bit of business, I know too. But thank you so much for talking to me today. And for those of you that tuned in, thank you as well. And if you want to know more about Arizona wine, Colorado wine, Texas, or New Mexico, I hope you guys will check out The Wines of Southwest USA, which is a book that just came out. You can check out my link in bio if you want to give it an order, and I'll sign it for you. More importantly, I think you should check out Los Milics when it comes out. I'm super excited for you guys, and I actually can't wait to come and see it. I mean, when I was there in March, there was nothing yet. Y'all had just put some things into the ground. I think the concrete had just been poured on the foundation. So I kind of want to come back and see everything. And when we can do that, I will.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully, winery's completed. We're gonna start construction on the tasting room at the end of this year, beginning of next, in addition to lodging. So by the time you come back, you will not recognize the place. But enough about us. I do want to give you a huge tip of the hat. Thank you so much for shining a spotlight, Jessica. Thank you so much for including us. Keep on fighting the good fight.
Yes, thank you for the book.
You're the best.
Yeah, you guys are awesome too. I'm gonna come see you as soon as all this COVID stuff's cleared up. Y'all stay safe and stay healthy, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jessica. Bye. Bye, everyone.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you.